I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Mohammad Ishaq Dar, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan.
Thank you, Excellency President, Security Council, Honorable Secretary General UN, Excellencies, colleague ministers, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. It is indeed a great pleasure seeing you, my dear friend, Minister Wang Yi, presiding over the important Security Council meeting. Pakistan congratulates China on its successful presidency and commends your leadership in convening this timely debate on practicing multilateralism, reforming and improving global governance. I also thank Honorable Secretary General for his insightful statement. Mr. President, we are meeting today at a time of profound global turbulence. The world faces a multitude of interconnected crises, threatening international peace and stability, economic stability and sustainable development, including wars in the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. Prolonged and brutal foreign occupation, resurgent fascism, great power rivalries, and renewed global arms race, the increasing weaponization of cyberspace and outer space, and new and destructive technologies. Mr. President, the continued inequalities of the global financial system have further aggravated today's crisis. The very fabric of the world order established under the UN Charter is in danger of being torn apart unless timely reforms and corrective actions are not undertaken. Mr. President, under the visionary leadership of President Xi Jinping, China is working actively to address the multi-pronged mixed crisis the world faces today. We, the United Nations member states, are all in the same boat. We must help each other to avoid the threat of a global war, the use of nuclear weapons, the issues of poverty, the existential threat of climate change. In the Pact for the Future, adopted last year, our leaders have reaffirmed their collective determination to respond to these challenges. We must translate these commitments into actions. It is clear that these complex and interlinked challenges can only be addressed through a renewed recourse to the multilateralism based on the universal and consistent adherence to the fundamental principles of the UN Charter, self-determination of peoples, non-use of threat force, non-acquisition of territory but the use of force, respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states, non-interference in their internal affairs, and pacific settlement of disputes. Mr. President, nowhere is our failure to uphold the Charter and its principles more evident than in the ongoing tragedy in Palestine, in the vicious military aggression in Gaza, the mass killings of civilians, mostly women and children, in the systematic violations of fundamental human rights, international law, and international humanitarian law. Mr. President, after witnessing 15 months of unimaginable suffering in Gaza, the ceasefire agreement between Hamas and Israel announced on 15th of January 2025 offers a glimmer of hope. Pakistan welcomes this agreement and commends the mediation efforts of Egypt, Qatar, and the United States. We hope that all stages of the agreement will be fully implemented, leading to a permanent ceasefire and an inclusive political process towards a two-state solution. This remains the only viable framework for durable peace between Israel and the Palestinians and the Arab and the Muslim world. We call for urgent and adequate humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza. The role of UNRWA is critical in this context. We also look forward to the earliest reconstruction of Gaza. We oppose any displacement of the Palestinian people from their homeland. Mr. President, the Jammu and Kashmir dispute is another open wound and an ever-present threat to international peace and security. For almost 8 decades, the same life of the UN, the people of Jammu and Kashmir have confronted brutal foreign occupation and been denied their right to self-determination as prescribed by multiple UN Security Council resolutions. The Security Council has an enduring responsibility to ensure the implementation of its own resolutions. Pakistan will continue to work for a peaceful resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with the UN Charter and relevant Security Council resolutions. Mr. President, a peaceful and stable Afghanistan is essential for regional and global security. Pakistan continues to face cross-border terrorist attacks, especially by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan from Afghan soil. Pakistan remains determined to take all necessary measures to counter these threats. The IAG must take decisive action to prevent terrorism within and from Afghanistan. Despite the cross-border terrorism, Pakistan will continue its engagement with the interim government in Kabul, facilitate humanitarian support to the millions of destitute people in Afghanistan, and support Afghanistan's economic and social development. Mr. President, terrorism remains a global threat. Pakistan has been at the forefront of the fight against terrorism, sacrificing thousands of lives to dismantle terrorist networks and prevent the spread of extremism. All terrorist groups, be it Daesh, Al-Qaeda, TTP, ETM, IMU, and emerging right-wing extremist group, must be opposed with equal determination. Double standards must be rejected. Nor should counterterrorism provide a pretext to surpass the legitimate struggles of peoples for self-determination. Mr. President, the United Nations and its family of organizations provide the indispensable platforms to respond to the world's multidimensional challenges. So far, the United Nations has not been enabled to achieve its full potential. The structures of the UN should be strengthened, not dismantled. This can be achieved through mutual respect and comprehensive cooperation. Mr. President, to address the challenges of the 21st century, we must reaffirm our commitment to multilateralism and undertake comprehensive reforms of the global governance architecture, refine and reinforce multilateralism to deliver optimum outcomes. No country should presume to have greater stature or influence on others. Respect for justice and equity is an essential precondition for peace and harmony among nations. To this end, Pakistan proposes the following. First, the Pact for the Future promises stronger international action for peace and security. Member states must fulfill their obligations under Article 25 of the Charter by implementing the Security Council's decisions. We must adopt a policy of zero tolerance for violations of the UN Charter. The Security Council should promote peaceful settlement of disputes, resolve and not merely manage conflicts. The Council should adopt a global confidence-building measures to prevent conflicts, ease tensions, and foster cooperation. Second, the UN Security Council must become more democratic, representative, and accountable. The small and medium states, which form the vast majority of the UN members, must be fully and adequately represented on the Security Council. Adding new permanent members would violate the principle of sovereignty and sovereign equality, make the Council even less representative, and exacerbate the prospects of paralysis in the Security Council. Third, the General Assembly, as world's most representative body, must play a greater role in global decision-making. Its mandates and resolution must be respected, and its effectiveness and efficiency enhanced. Fourth, global financial and economic governance must be made more equitable and democratic. The current system is unjust, favoring the rich while trapping developing nations in a cycle of poverty and debt. We call for reforms of the IMF and World Bank to ensure adequate and concessional development financing, debt relief, and allocation of special drawing rights. Fifth and last, the rapid advancement of science and technology, especially artificial intelligence, poses new challenges. International regulations are urgently needed to ensure these technologies serve peaceful and beneficial purposes and do not deepen global inequalities and do not intensify the threats to peace and security. Mr. President, the world order envisioned in the UN Charter must be strengthened. A just, peaceful, and prosperous world requires a strong, effective, and truly representative multilateral system, one that upholds the UN Charter, defends human rights, and ensures equitable development for all. I thank you.
Mr. President, we congratulate you on the assumption of the presidency of the Council and appreciate the initiative in organizing today's open debate. A theme that stands pronounced in today's open debate is a call for reformed multilateralism. While many of the speakers have already highlighted the dire need for reforms, I'm confident that several others would also follow suit. This is a clear testimony to the need for reviewing and redesigning the 80-year-old architecture of this august forum in order to make it fit for purpose. At a time when the world is increasingly expressing concerns about the ability of the United Nations to deliver effectively on pressing global issues, reforms are not a choice anymore, but an imperative. In this backdrop, I would like to highlight 7 specific points. First, India has been consistent, categorical, and a major voice with regard to underscoring the need for reforms. I would like to quote Prime Minister Modi, who mentioned in his remarks at the Summit for the Future in September 2024 that reforms is the key to relevance. Second, original structures and frameworks of the UN represent a different period in history. Our world has transformed and the UN needs to change with the times. It has to be reflective of the current global order rather than 1945. Third, addressing the historical injustice to Africa has to be a central element of the reforms. To this end, India has always been supportive of the common African position. In this context, I would also urge those member states whose support to Africa has been limited to pro forma statements to clearly articulate their position on expansion in the permanent category, which is where Africa is not represented. Fourth, the Global South cannot continue to be shortchanged. India and major players in other parts of the world deserve their due representation in the structures of the United Nations. As regards the Security Council, this translates to permanent category membership. Fifth, 3 fundamental principles are essential to the success of Security Council reforms: increase in membership of both the permanent and non-permanent categories, commencement of text-based negotiations, and linking ambitious timelines with concrete outcomes. Sixth, those opposed to expansion of permanent category are status quoists with a narrow focus. Their approach is non-progressive in nature, and this can no longer be accepted. Finally, beyond the Security Council, the preeminent position of the United Nations General Assembly as a primary policy-making and representative organ of the United Nations is to be respected both in letter and spirit. I would like to emphasize that India is firmly committed to the cause of reforms, and we will work closely with our friends and partners. We call on all member states to also join this endeavor for reformed multilateralism. Mr. President, beyond the focus of today's debate, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan, Mr. Mohammad Ishaq Dar, has referred to an integral and inalienable part of India, the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, in his remarks. I would like to reaffirm that Jammu and Kashmir has been, is, and will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. In fact, it is Pakistan that is in illegal occupation of parts of Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan's campaigns of misinformation and disinformation, of lies and falsehood, do not change facts on the ground. The people of Jammu and Kashmir have only last year taken part in a successful election and have voted in large numbers to choose their government. The choice of the people of Jammu and Kashmir was loud and clear. Democracy in Jammu and Kashmir is vibrant and strong, unlike in Pakistan. Pakistan is a global epicenter of terrorism, harboring more than 20 UN-listed terrorist entities and providing state support to cross-border terrorism. Hence, it is a supreme irony when Pakistan pats itself on the back as being at the forefront of the fight against terrorism. India has been a victim of the acts of terror perpetrated by this country through terror groups such as Jaish-e-Mohammed and Harkatul Mujahideen, among dozens of others. Mr. President, there cannot be any justification for terrorism regardless of its form, type, and motive. No political grievance can justify terrorism perpetrated against innocent civilians. This august body can make no distinction between good and bad terrorists. And I request the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Pakistan to take note of it and not further waste the time of the Council in this regard. I thank you, Mr. President.
Stay ahead with our cutting-edge news app. Instantly access the latest shorts in just 1 minute and breaking news in just 50 words. Download now for a smarter, faster news experience.